4:17 in the morning. I was driving through the snow to Vermont for my daughter's engagement party when the phone rang. A strange man's voice whispered, "If you love your daughter, don't go any farther. Stop the car, now." I thought it was a wrong number. But then, in the rearview mirror, I saw a black SUV following me. My heart froze. I didn't know who was after my family back then. All I knew was I had to turn the car around. And that turn saved everything. Before we go on, subscribe to the channel and tell me where you're listening from. I slammed the brakes. The tires screamed over the frozen road, that sharp metallic sound cutting straight into my memory. Interstate 89 was empty. Nothing but snow fog and the wind scraping against the glass. In that moment, I turned to the passenger seat, Margaret, my ex-wife, still asleep. Her head leaned against the window, her face calm, almost peaceful. She hadn't heard a thing. But that voice still echoed in my head, low, rough, steady. Not threatening, just certain. If you love your daughter, don't go any farther. Stop the car. Now, no background noise, no wind, no static. As if the call came from inside the car. I sat there gripping the steering wheel until my hands went numb. 30 years in industrial security taught me one thing. When a man's voice doesn't shake, doesn't plead, doesn't hesitate, he's not joking. Outside, a green sign flashed past mile 46. One more mile to the state line where the road begins winding through the mountains. I took a deep breath, pulled over into the emergency lane and turned on the hazards. The snow glowed orange under the flashing lights, soft and eerie against the windshield. Margaret stirred awake. "What is it, Ed? Car trouble? I just need to check the trunk," I said, trying to keep my voice even. She frowned, Sophie's chest. "You're opening it now, out here in this cold." I didn't answer. I just popped the trunk. Cold air rushed in, sharp biting, almost like a warning. The chest was there, black wood gold lock-carved words, "For Sophie's new beginning." The lid was slightly open. Not latched. Not the way I remembered. When I reached for it, Margaret came closer. "Edward, what are you worried about?" I looked at her. Those same sharp, intelligent eyes I'd known for decades. But now there was something else, unease. Not fear for me. Fear of what was inside. "Just making sure everything's okay," I said, and lifted the lid. Inside, no silk, no invitations. Just a stack of files with the logo of a tech investment firm, Cross Dynamics. Beneath them, a small metal case. A data storage unit. One of the designs I'd helped create years ago. I powered it on. Lines of code flickered across the tiny screen. Then one line appeared, wallet balance, $130,000 USD, $42 million. Not jewelry, not a wedding gift. An encrypted digital wallet used only in transactions people don't want the government to see. Margaret whispered. "Ed, what are you doing? Close it, please." I turned toward her, caught that flicker in her eyes. "You knew about this, no?" Sophie said not to open it. Her voice trembled, and I'd lived long enough to recognize when someone's hiding something. The wind outside picked up, sweeping the snow into a white haze. I shut the chest, but my thoughts kept spinning. A cold realization crept in Sophie. Might have no idea what this money really is. I pulled out my phone, ready to call her, then froze. A new message on the screen. "If you opened it, they already know." I looked around. The road was still empty, but I felt eyes on me. Far behind, headlights flickered once, then vanished. The black SUV. I reached for Margaret's hand, not for comfort, but for truth. "Did you get any messages this morning?" She shook her head, but her hand stayed tight around the phone in her pocket. I got back in, started the engine, and pulled onto the road. "Where are we going?" she asked. "The next rest stop," I said. "I need to call Sophie. If someone's watching us, I won't let them get near her." My voice came out cold, certain. Even I barely recognized it. It had been years since I'd felt the urge to protect anyone. not since the divorce. But this wasn't love. It was instinct, the kind that only wakes in a father, when he realizes his child might be caught in something far darker than he ever imagined. I still don't know who made that call, or why they wanted to stop me. But one thing I know for sure, if I hadn't pulled over at mile 46, I might never have had the chance to ask my daughter the question I should have asked long ago. Do you really know the man you're about to marry? I pulled into a small rest stop by the highway. A single yellow light glowed weakly above the falling snow. The clock read 5:12 a.m. No other cars in sight, except for the same black SUV I'd seen earlier parked across the lanes. It didn't move, but I knew someone was still in there watching. I turned off the engine and sat for a few seconds just listening. Nothing but the wind, and my own heartbeat. Margaret sat still beside me, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. In the rearview mirror, I caught her eyes, fear mixed with something else. Defensiveness. "Ed, what are you going to do?" she whispered. "Find out what our daughter's gotten herself into." I opened the trunk, pulled the chest out, and set it on the back seat. The light from the rest stop reflected on the black wood, shimmering faintly. It didn't look like a wedding chest anymore. It looked like Pandora's box. This time I didn't open the lock by hand. I used the small pocket knife I always kept in the car. A thin scratch appeared on the side, and beneath the wood I saw a tiny circuit line like an antenna. This wasn't just a chest. It was a tracker. God. I breathed out, running my finger along the edge. Margaret stared, then looked away. "Who would do something like this?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I don't know yet. But if someone's watching us, they didn't leave $42 million in here for nothing." I lifted the metal box again, looked closer at the screen, still glowing. But now there was something new at the bottom. Access ID CRS 9821. CRS Cross Dynamics. Daniel Cross, Sophie's fiancé. I'd never liked the man. Too young, too polished, too rich. The kind of man who knows how to make people believe he loves them when what he really loves is control. "Margaret," I said slowly, "did Sophie ever mention this name to you?" She nodded slightly, avoiding my eyes. "She said Daniel's company's going public next year. They just needed some temporary financial support until the deal closes." I thought, this chest was a wedding gift from him. I didn't say anything. Part of me wanted to believe her. The other part knew no one sends a gift that doubles as an encrypted device with a live signal. I took a photo of the screen, meaning to send it to an old friend, Greg, ex-FBI, a man I could still trust. But as I opened my contacts, my phone went dead, battery full, hardware fine, just shut down, remotely. I turned toward Margaret. Her hands were tight around her phone eyes, staring out the window. "Let me see your phone," I said. "There's nothing, Ed. Let me see it." She hesitated, then handed it over. On the lock screen, one notification glowed faintly. "Transfer confirmed. 05:08 a.m. I said nothing. I just felt my chest go cold, not from the air, but from what I was starting to understand. She didn't look up. "I didn't have a choice, Ed. They said if I didn't help, Sophie would lose everything. Daniel's company, her future. I just wanted her to be happy." I closed my eyes. What kind of happiness is built on lies? I didn't yell, didn't even raise my voice. I was just tired. "You helped them plant this device in my car. I just gave them the chest. I didn't think they'd use it like that." I gave a short, dry laugh. "Did you ever think in 25 years of marriage that less lying would make us love each other more?" She said nothing. Outside, the snow was falling heavier now, thick and quiet. I closed the chest, zipped my coat, and stepped out. The cold hit my face like a slap. I looked toward the SUV. It hadn't moved, still waiting. I knew I couldn't go to Vermont anymore, but I also couldn't stay here. If this chest was bait, then both Margaret and I were already in their sights. I turned back to her voice low. We're not giving this to anyone. I've got an old friend who owes me a few favors. But before we go, I need to know one thing. Does Sophie know anything about this? Margaret shook her head, tears tracing the lines on her cheeks. She thinks it's just a gift from me. She doesn't know a thing. I nodded slowly. Finally, the pieces started to fit. My daughter, innocent. My ex-wife, used. And Daniel Cross standing right in the center of a storm made of dirty money. I started the engine. The tires bit into the snow, carving a long trail through the white silence. I didn't know where I was headed next, only that I needed to move before they found me. And if my gut was right, the man who called me at 4:17 a.m. wasn't warning me to stop. He was begging me to save my daughter. I left the rest stop just as the sky began to fade into that pale gray of early morning. The road ahead blurred through the fog streetlights, standing like quiet sentinels along the way. Margaret sat still beside me, her hands clenched together, eyes fixed on the empty stretch of road. We both knew it. After opening that chest, there was no turning back. The black SUV was still behind us, keeping the same steady distance, like it was waiting for us to make a mistake. I switched to manual drive, turned off the interstate, and followed a narrow mountain road. At that point, instinct was all I had left, and it had kept me alive for more than 30 years in the security business. 15 minutes later, I spotted an old abandoned gas station. The sign "Gas and Dine" hung broken, swaying in the wind. I pulled in. The headlights flashed across cracked windows that threw back a warped reflection of my own face. I needed to check the chest again, not to see what was inside, but to find out who was watching us. I lifted the lid, peeled back the bottom lining. There, taped to the wooden edge, was a tiny micro-audio chip, no bigger than a coin. Not just a tracker, a listening device. They weren't only following us. They were hearing everything. I pulled the battery, pinched it shut, and slipped it into my coat pocket. It felt like tearing an invisible eye out of the dark. Margaret. I said, my voice rough. Are you sure Daniel's the one who gave you the chest? She nodded, tears forming. He said Sophie was busy and asked me to deliver it. I swear, Ed, I didn't know. I believed her partly. But something didn't add up. If Daniel needed to transfer money, why go through Margaret? Why through me? And why hide it from Sophie? I took out my phone to check the signal. A call appeared on the screen. No number, just a message. Keep driving south. Trust no one. I turned it off instantly and tossed it into the back seat. Someone was running this network, and they knew exactly where I was. What's going on? Margaret asked. I think there's more than one player in this, I said quietly. We're being used, Margaret. All of us. Her voice trembled. You think Daniel's lying to Sophie? I stayed silent for a moment, then nodded. I think he's lying to both of you. I could still see Daniel's face in my mind, the easy smile, the confident handshake. He'd said, Don't worry, sir. I'll take care of Sophie like she's part of my own family. Now that line sounded less like a promise and more like a setup. Suddenly, the black SUV's headlights flared behind us. It was moving fast. I hit the gas, swerving onto a narrow downhill road through the trees. Margaret screamed, clutching the handle. Snow exploded around the tires. The car slid, caught, and roared forward again. Behind us, the SUV's engine howled like a predator on the hunt. I veered off onto a wooden bridge, killed the lights, and waited. The SUV sped past the upper road, fading into the distance. We sat there, breathing hard. The air smelled like cold metal and exhaust. I turned to Margaret. She was shivering, lips pale. I pulled off my coat and draped it over her shoulders. We're not going to Vermont, I said quietly. We're going to see Greg. Greg, old friend, used to be FBI. If anyone knows who Daniel really is, it's him. She nodded without a word. Maybe for the first time in years, she didn't argue. As I drove, my mind kept building the picture I didn't want to see. Daniel Cross, the polished tech entrepreneur, was running an international money laundering network. And the chest was just one link in the chain. Margaret was a pawn. And Sophie, my daughter, my little girl, was in the middle, not even knowing she was the clean exit strategy for men like him. My throat felt dry. I'd spent my life believing in honor, in justice. But right then, I only believed in one thing: protecting my daughter, whatever it took. The road curved around the frozen lake below. Beyond it lay the southern route, the way to Greg. I exhaled, hands steady on the wheel. Margaret whispered, "If this all comes out, Sophie will lose everything." I looked at her. My voice was low, firm. If I don't do something, she'll lose more than that: her freedom, and her faith in the people who were supposed to protect her. The wind hissed through the cracked door seal. Far ahead, the black SUV reappeared, heading the opposite way now. They didn't know we'd changed course. I tightened my grip on the wheel and turned toward the forest road that led down to the lake. We were driving straight into the most dangerous part of this game, where one mistake could bring everything crashing down. And I didn't know yet that beneath that frozen lake ahead, I was about to find something far more terrifying than $42 million. I slowed down as the road began to twist around the mountainside. Below us stretched the frozen lake, its surface gleaming with that cold, silvery light of early morning. The sky hung still and gray, so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat blending with the steady hum of the engine. Margaret stayed silent, eyes following the long ribbon of white snow outside her window. I knew what she was thinking, whether any of this could still be undone. I didn't blame her. We all have weak moments. She just trusted the wrong man. About 10 minutes later, I saw a sign, mile 47. At that exact moment, my phone buzzed. A message on the screen: "If you value your daughter's life, stop now." I didn't know who sent it, but the words chilled my blood. I pulled over, killed the engine. Snowflakes drifted against the windshield. In the quiet that followed, I heard Margaret exhale. "What are you going to do?" she asked softly. I opened the trunk, pulled the chest out. "Handle this. My way." She stepped out, shivering. "Ed, you're not going to destroy it, are you?" "That's our only proof. That's exactly why it needs to go," I said. My eyes fixed on the lake below. I opened the chest and took out the digital wallet unit. Its LED light blinked faintly, small, cold, and unsettling against the snow. Then I reached into my coat and pulled out something else, a perfect replica of the chest, a little smaller than the one I'd built last night in my old garage. Margaret's voice trembled. You planned this?" I nodded. "I used to design security systems for projects 10 times bigger than this. If you want to get out alive, you don't run. You make them believe you're still in the game." I placed the fake chest on the back seat, slid the old tracking battery inside. Then I tossed the real one onto the frozen lake. The crash echoed across the valley. Cracks spread through the ice like lightning. A moment later, the water below swallowed $42 million without a trace. Margaret stared at me, horrified. "Ed, you've lost your mind. You have no idea who you're up against." I turned toward her, calm. "Oh, I know exactly who I'm up against. I just won't let them touch my daughter." I started the engine. The rear tires slipped caught, and the car straightened. The headlights cut through the falling snow as I turned south. Behind us, the black SUV appeared around the bend, its beams flashing across the rearview mirror. I pressed harder on the gas. The chase began. 2 cars tearing through a corridor of pine and ice. I could hear their engine roaring behind me, wild and hungry. Margaret gripped the seat. "They're catching up. I don't need to outrun them," I said, eyes on the road. "I just need them to chase the wrong trail." I turned sharply onto a narrow side road leading toward an abandoned ski lodge. The GPS now pointed toward the Canadian border, exactly what I wanted. They'd think we were heading north, running for the border, and they'd follow the decoy chest. Minutes later, the SUV sped past the main road, racing ahead, unaware. I pulled behind a row of old wooden cabins, cut the engine. Silence again, just our breath, and the frost crawling up the glass. Margaret whispered, her voice breaking. "What will you tell Sophie?" I looked out at the faint light slipping through the trees. "Nothing," I said quietly. "Some truths only hurt more when they come too soon." I leaned back, hands still resting on the wheel. For a moment I felt something close to peace, like I'd finally severed the last thread tying me to the past. No money, no lies, just me, and the fragile hope that my daughter might still have a chance at a clean life. I glanced at Margaret. Her eyes were red, her face drawn with guilt. And yet, there was warmth there. She finally understood love isn't measured in gifts or numbers. It's in the choice to protect someone even when it costs you everything. Outside, the wind had stopped. The snow had thinned to a whisper. I knew we had to move before they realized the chest was fake. I tightened my grip on the wheel, looked at the long, white road ahead, and said quietly but firmly, "Time to find Greg." I didn't know what my old friend would say, or whether the FBI had already touched this mess. All I knew was that I still had one chance left to end it, and keep Sophie safe from something she couldn't even see. Because sometimes, the real enemy isn't the one chasing you down the road, it's the one smiling back from the wedding photo that was never taken. I got to Greg's place later that afternoon. The air was still cold, but the sun had begun breaking through the clouds, spilling light across the thin layer of ice on the trees. His cabin sat by the lake, smoke rising from the chimney, the smell of burning wood thick in the air. Greg opened the door before I could knock. "Jesus, Ed. You look like hell." I saw the news. "What news?" I asked, stepping inside. He pointed to the TV. On the screen, the headline rolled by Cross Dynamics under investigation for international money laundering. And there he was, Daniel Cross, being led out of a building in Montreal handcuffed. My chest tightened. Sophie's face flashed in my mind. Those innocent eyes. Had she seen this yet? Greg pulled out a chair for me and dropped a folder on the table. "I figured you were tied to this somehow," he said. "FBI just expanded the case from the Canadian side. And guess what they said? An anonymous source handed them evidence with exact coordinates." I just looked at him. Didn't say a word. He smiled faintly. "Still the same old Ed. Retired or not, you're the only guy I know who can turn danger into leverage." I sighed. I never wanted to be a hero. I just wanted my daughter safe. Greg nodded, resting a hand on my shoulder. "She's safe, Ed. Sophie's not under investigation. All the money trails stop with Daniel and—" He hesitated. "Margaret." I closed my eyes. My heart sank a little deeper. "She was arrested this morning in Vermont." Greg went on quietly. "She told them everything. How Daniel manipulated her, threatened her, made her move the data and crypto through you." I didn't speak. All I could see was Margaret's face the last time I looked at her tired, tense hands gripping her coat like she already knew this day would come. She said Greg continued, "You were the only one she trusted to keep that chest safe. And even if you threw it into the lake, that was still the only way to save them both." I leaned back and stared out the window. The frozen lake glimmered under the afternoon sun, patches of melting ice shining like shards of broken glass. "I don't hate her," I said slowly. "I just regret that somewhere along the way, we forgot how to trust each other." Greg didn't answer. He just poured us both some coffee. For a while, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the steady tick of the clock time, dragging its feet across the room. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I picked it up. A trembling voice. "Dad, it's me, Sophie." I shot to my feet. "Sophie, where are you?" "I'm in New York. The FBI came by. They said something about Mom. About Daniel. I don't understand any of it." Her voice cracked. "They said you were the reason they were all caught. Is it true, Dad?" I took a deep breath, looked at Greg. He gave me a small nod like saying, "Tell her." "Sophie," I said quietly, "I did what any father would do when he sees his child being pulled into someone else's mistake." There was silence. Then I heard her breathing change, soft, broken, like someone who'd just seen the truth too late. "Dad, I always thought you hated Daniel because no one would ever be good enough for me." I let out a sad laugh. "I didn't hate him, honey. I just saw something you couldn't." Another pause. Then her voice shaking. "Thank you, Dad." I don't know what else to say. I looked out the window. The sunlight was fading across the lake, glimmering like the last breath of the day. "Just live honestly, Sophie," I said. "Don't let anyone else decide what happiness means for you." She whispered, "Okay," and the line went dead. I set the phone down. For the first time in years, my shoulders felt lighter, like I'd finally laid down a burden I'd been carrying far too long. Greg smiled. "Maybe you should write a memoir someday. This story's worth telling." I shook my head. "No. Some stories should only live in memory, reminding us what not to forget, but not something to relive." I stood put on my coat and stepped outside. The cold air bit at my neck, carrying the scent of snow and wood smoke. I looked up at the pale sky and whispered to myself. The first call made me stop the car. The second taught me to let go. I don't know if the road ahead will be any easier. All I know is that from that day on, I chose to trust again, not in others, but in my own heart. Because sometimes, love isn't about holding on. It's knowing when to let go, so the ones you love can finally be free. If you're still here, thank you for staying with me until the very end. Some choices only make sense when we look back. And some calls in life we just have to be brave enough to answer, even when our hearts are shaking. If this story moved you, hit subscribe so you won't miss what comes next, where every secret isn't told just to shock you, but to remind us that sometimes the truth is how we find our way back to ourselves.